Ah, the good old days. Before the days of custody hearings, Pokemon Go, and sex, not having till I'm married, I am of course referring to childhood. A carefree time of almost no real responsibility, but way too many McNuggets in Minecraft. You all remember your childhoods, right? Telling your teacher one day you'll be an astronaut ninja billionaire who part-times as Batman. Then realizing later she knew the whole time you'd get fired from Taco Bell for licking chalupas. Well, I'd like to introduce you to the manliest man-child you'll ever meet, Calvin Graham. While the Steves of the world were busy using their body as an amusement park, Calvin actually achieved his dream job by enlisting in the US military at the age of 12. This is the incredible true story of the world's youngest soldier and the only preteen to receive a Purple Heart. Before we get started, make sure you punch that bell to subscribe to FAK'D TV, presented by FindAKidneyDonor.com. Our story today begins in the entertainment capital of the world, Canton, Texas. Young Calvin Graham grew up in the wake of the Great Depression as just one of 7 children. As war began to rage through Europe, Calvin, at just 9 years of age, made a conscious choice that he would do his part to serve his country, even if that meant fighting Nazis and puberty at the same time. To realize his dream, Calvin and his brother put a plan into motion. They started by moving out of their abusive household and selling newspapers after school to afford a cheap place to live. However, as all you history nerds are aware, the US was sitting on the sidelines and not involved in the war in Europe. This left the young Texan bored and preparing to transition to life as a working-class middle schooler. He even began shaving to try to make himself look older. However, after Calvin's 11th birthday, the United States would officially enter World War II after the attacks at Pearl Harbor. The Graham brothers lined up so fast outside their local recruitment office, you'd think they were serving Popeye's chicken sandwiches. Now I know what you're thinking. How exactly does a child even enter the military? Surely an adult would notice if 11 from Stranger Things or a young, less entitled Kardashian was enlisting. Well, Calvin took care of that. He forged his mother's signature, he stole a notary's stamp, and dressed like other 17-year-olds he knew. The plan was almost a complete success, even passing the initial physical. However, there was a slight hiccup when a dentist noticed a freaking child who still had baby teeth coming across his desk. But Calvin would not be denied. He simply informed the dentist none of his friends were of age either, but they weren't noticed. Apparently, the dentist couldn't give a shit, as that night Calvin was on a bus to boot camp in San Diego. Within 2 months, the now 12-year-old was in Hawaii on his first tour aboard the USS South Dakota. Once setting off for the Pacific Theater, Calvin Graham would serve honorably. While his classmates were all licking paint and kicking dirt or whatever else there is to do in Texas, Graham was working as a loader on a 40mm anti-aircraft gun, catching the attention of his superiors for his hard work. In fact, 10 days into his tour, Calvin was awarded a Navy Unit Commendation for his efforts during the Battle of Santa Cruz. Things would change though in November 1942, as the South Dakota was engaged with Japanese forces during the Battle of Guadalcanal. While running a message to an officer, the young preteen was struck by shrapnel. Despite the extensive fragmentation wounds ripping right through his jaw, Calvin spent the rest of the night pulling several wounded men to safety and caring for them. For these amazing heroics, Calvin Graham would be awarded the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. The Navy was so pleased with this new American hero that they posted his photo in newsreels all across the country, including in Canton, Texas. Upon seeing her son, Calvin's mother called the Navy and let them know they fell for a fake note from a 12-year-old. Sadly, this would be the end of Calvin Graham's naval dreams, as he was immediately arrested and placed in a military brig. Eventually released after 3 months due to public pressure, Calvin was dishonorably discharged and stripped of all awards. Back in Houston, though, Calvin Graham was treated like a celebrity. Reporters were eager to write his story. But once you've lived life as an adult, it's kind of hard to become a kid again. Following his stint in the Navy, he got married at 14, became a father at 15, and got divorced at age 16. Yeah, Calvin did more by his sweet 16 than I've done in my entire life. Once he turned 17, Calvin decided to have another crack at the military and enlisted in the Marine Corps. However, during a freak accident, Calvin fell off a pier and broke his back. Although now he qualified for military medical benefits, he would spend the rest of his life trying to clear his military record and recoup medical expenses. He eventually had his medals reinstated in 1978 by President Jimmy Carter, all except the Purple Heart, which wouldn't be reinstated till 1994. Sadly, Calvin didn't live to see his Purple Heart awarded back to his rightful owner. Calvin Graham will go down in history as the youngest enlisted soldier in modern history and a true American role model. Sorry kids, but the Cash Me Outside girl and Justin Bieber don't compare. And that's it for the story of Calvin Graham, the youngest ever recipient of the Purple Heart. Have you ever lied on a job application or a resume? Are we as brave as our ancestors 80 years ago? What's the bravest thing you ever did as a kid? Let us know in the comments and we'll give $1 million to the best followers comment. And no, we won't. Thank you for checking out our newest video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you do, we'll be your best friends.